J.W. Williams Funeral Directors have been proudly serving the people of this community since 1918. Service is our motto. The poor, the rich, the middle class and all are given the best of care and attention at all times. You have the privilege to select what you want. In your time of need, contact the capable, the competent, and the dependable staff of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home who is genuinely concerned with your care. At J.W. Williams Funeral Home, you are aptly served by the proprietor president, Deacon Arthur L. Parker, who continues the traditions and values set forth by the past president, Dr. Napoleon Williams. Your announcers for the J.W. Williams Funeral Home Sunday morning program are Deacon Arthur L. Parker, Reverend Isaac H. Owens, Mrs. Calandra Wilkerson Parker, Minister Frankie Harmon, Ms. Sandra Johnson, and Deacon Earl Clark, Jr.
Thank you, and good morning, friends. We come to you this morning to bring announcements, dedications, and songs. We certainly hope that your day may be brighter after listening to our program. The family of Mr. Xavier Alexander Sims of Americus, Georgia. The family of Mother Alberta Brown Troutman of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mrs. Bernadine Green King of Lithonia, Georgia, formerly of Americus, Georgia. The family of Mrs. Gwendolyn Reed Sellers of Abbeville, Georgia. The family of Miss Carlita Elaine Lewis of Cordele, Georgia. Would like to thank that many friends for the food, the flowers, the condolences, and all other expressions of sympathy and kindness shown to them during their hours of sorrow and bereavement during the past week. Mr. Xavier Alexander Sims, age 27, of 178 Hopper Subdivision, Americus, Georgia, died Thursday, December 7th at his residence in Americus, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Xavier Alexander Sims, age 27, was held Wednesday, December 13th, graveside at the Eastview Cemetery in Americus, Georgia. His pastor, the Reverend Daniel Clinton, pastor of the Ship Chapel Baptist Church, officiated. Survivors include his loving and devoted mother, Mrs. Wybett Brown of Americus, Georgia, his loving and devoted father, Mr. Alexander Sims of Americus, Georgia, his loving sisters, Mrs. Michaela Sims of Vienna, Georgia, Mr. Maya Sims of Americus, Georgia, his beloved brothers, Mr. Kente Sims and Mr. Marco Cross, both of Americus, Georgia, his loving grandmother, Miss Mary Hurley of Americus, Georgia, his loving aunts and uncles, Miss Deborah Village, Miss Vivian Colbert, Mr. David Brown, and Mrs. Cheryl Hurley, all of Americus, Georgia, Miss Beverly Brown of DeSoto, Georgia, Mr. Terry Brown and his wife, Mrs. Sandra Brown of Concord, North Carolina, and Mr. Tony Brown of Cobb, Georgia. A host of beloved cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends, to include Mr. Cale Hurley, Mr. Cody Hurley, and Mr. Pat Davis, all of Americus, Georgia. Survived Mr. Xavier Alexander Sims, age 27, of 178 Harper Subdivision, Americus, Georgia. Mother Alberta Brown Trotman, age 97, of 302 West 15th Avenue, Cordele, Georgia, died Saturday, December 9th at a residence in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mother Alberta Brown Trotman, age 97, was held Thursday, December 14th, in the chapel of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home in Cordele, Georgia. The Reverend Isaac H. Owens, pastor of the Mount Calvary Baptist Church, officiated. The burial followed at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include 11 and devoted children, Mrs. Georgette Keel of Miami, Florida, Mrs. Mary Terry and her husband, Brother Albert Terry of Cordele, Georgia, Mrs. Joanne Rivers and her husband, Mr. Gregory Rivers of Warner Robins, Georgia, Mr. Abraham Trotman Jr. and his wife, Mrs. Carolyn Trotman, Mr. James Trotman, and Ms. Katrina McKenzie, all of Cordele, Georgia. A host of grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren. A beloved sister, Mrs. Barbara Mitchell, and her husband, Mr. Freddie Mitchell. A host of nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survived Mother Alberta Brown Trotman, age 97, of 302 West 15th Avenue, Cordele, Georgia. Mrs. Bernadine Green King, age 61, of 3338 Beauty Berry Way, Laconia, Georgia, formerly of Americus, Georgia, died Wednesday, December 6th, at the Emory Hilldale Hospital in Laconia, Georgia. The funeral service for Mrs. Bernadine Green King, age 61, was held Saturday, December 16th, at the Eastview Cemetery Pavilion in Americus, Georgia. The Reverend Albert Campbell officiated. The eulogy was delivered by the Reverend Susie Tatum. Survivors include her loving and devoted husband, Mr. Dennis James King of Laconia, Georgia, her loving and devoted children, Mrs. Brittany A. Frazier and her husband, Mr. Bryant Frazier, Mrs. Brianna D. Conyers and her husband, Mr. Damian Conyers, and Mr. Brenton J. King and his wife, Mrs. Janae King, all of Laconia, Georgia. 5 beloved grandchildren, her loving and devoted mother, Mother Mary Lee Green Holmes of Americus, Georgia. 2 loving sisters, Miss Laverne Gaston of Albany, Georgia, and Mrs. Margie L. Johnson and her husband, Mr. Gregory Johnson of Americus, Georgia. A beloved brother, Mr. Calvin L. Holmes of Americus, Georgia. Her loving uncle, Mr. Curtis Gaston of Atlanta, Georgia. Her loving aunt, Mrs. Ella Mae Smith Gaston of Chicago, Illinois. Her loving in-law, Mr. Henry King Jr. and his wife, Mrs. Diane King of Ellaville, Georgia. Mr. Emmanuel King of Warner Robins, Georgia, and Mr. Calvin King of Laconia, Georgia, and Mrs. Carolyn Campbell and her husband, the Reverend Albert Campbell of Americus, Georgia. A host of devoted nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends, to include her best friend, the Reverend Susie Tatum of Tuskegee, Alabama, survived Mrs. Bernadine Green King, age 61, of 3338 Beautyberry Way, Lithonia, Georgia, formerly of Americus, Georgia. Mrs. Gwendolyn Reed Sellers, age 64, of 237 Irvinville Road, Abbeville, Georgia, died Friday, December 8, at Atrium Navison Health Medical Center in Macon, Georgia. The funeral service for Mrs. Gwendolyn Reed Sellers, age 64, was held Saturday, December 16, in the sanctuary of the Elizabeth First Baptist Church in Abbeville, Georgia. The pastor, Reverend Michael J. Acre, officiated. The burial followed at the Riverside Cemetery in Abbeville, Georgia. Survivors include her loving and devoted sisters, Miss Wanakee Reed of Atlanta, Georgia, Miss Linda Reed and Miss Deborah Reed, both of Miami, Florida, Miss Dale Jackson of Quitman, Georgia, her beloved brothers, Mr. Gary Reed of Miami, Florida, and Mr. Anthony Reed of Fitzgerald, Georgia, her beloved aunts and uncles, Mrs. Jerry Beverett and her husband, Mr. Archie Beverett, and Miss Odessa Gibson of Abbeville, Georgia, Miss Nettie Jackson of Warner Robins, Georgia, Miss Mary Thompson of McRae, Georgia, Miss Barbara Jenkins and Miss Willa Cleveland, both of Abbeville, Georgia, Mr. Dwight Everson of Detroit, Michigan, her special nieces and nephews, cousins and friends, to include Miss Josie M. of Abbeville, Georgia, Miss Joyce Long of Jacksonville, Florida, Miss Latoya Connor and family, Miss Jordan Glover, all of Mableton, Georgia, Miss Veronica Fuller, and Miss Linda Ditson of Fairburn, Georgia, Miss Doris Timmons of Kingsland, Georgia, a host of other relatives, and many sorrowing friends survived Mrs. Gwendolyn Reed Sellers, age 64, of 237 Irvinville Road, Abbeville, Georgia. Miss Carlita Elaine Lewis, age 61, of 1317 Drayton Road, Cordele, Georgia, died Saturday, December 9th at the Piedmont Medical Center in Macon, Georgia. The funeral service for Miss Carlita Elaine Lewis, age 61, was held Saturday, December 16th in the chapel of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home in Cordele, Georgia. The Reverend Isaac H. Owens, pastor of the Mount Calvary Baptist Church, officiated. The eulogy was delivered by her pastor, Pastor Rosa Sanford, pastor of Holy Evangelistic Temple of God. The burial followed at the Sunnyside Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include her loving and devoted children, Mrs. Tamika Hardiman and her husband, Mr. Craig Hardiman, Miss Tiffany Lewis, Miss Shaquita Hill, and Mr. Carlo Lewis, all of Cordele, Georgia. 9 beloved grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren, her loving and devoted sisters, Mrs. Valerie Altman and her husband, Deacon Randall Altman of Vienna, Georgia, Miss Sonia Watkins of Albany, Georgia, and Miss Tammy Lewis of Cordele, Georgia. A host of other relatives and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Miss Kalita Elaine Lewis, age 61, of 1317 Drayton Road, Cordele, Georgia. Again, the family of Mr. Xavier Alexander Sims of Americus, Georgia, the family of Mother Alberta Brown Trotman of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Mrs. Bernadine Green King of Lithonia, Georgia, formerly of Americus, Georgia, the family of Mrs. Gwendolyn Reed Sellers of Abbeville, Georgia, the family of Miss Kalita Elaine Lewis of Cordele, Georgia, would like to thank their many friends for all of the many kindnesses shown to them during their hours of sorrow and bereavement during the past week. May God bless each of you is their prayer. The J.W. Williams funeral directors serving Cordele and Diana were in charge of each of these arrangements during the past week. And now, it is certainly with the deepest regret that we make the following announcements. Mrs. Shamika LaShawn Reese Hardeman, age 45, of 306 West 17th Avenue, Cordele, Georgia, died Sunday, December 3rd at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include her loving and devoted husband, Mr. Dwayne Hardeman of Cordele, Georgia, her loving and devoted children, Mr. Courtney Reese, Mr. Zabrine Reese, Mr. Dwayne Hardeman Jr., Mr. Kentavious Hardeman and his wife, Mrs. Jaleesa Hardeman, Mrs. Shanika Hardeman, and Mr. D'Angelo Hardeman, all of Cordele, Georgia. Mr. Kente Hardeman of Lithonia, Georgia. 13 beloved grandchildren. Her loving and devoted mother, Miss Sally B. Reese of Cordele, Georgia. Her loving and caring father, Mr. Winfred Crawford of Cordele, Georgia. Her loving and devoted sisters, Miss Erica Tyson of Warner Robins, Georgia, Miss Monica Brady and her husband, Mr. Johnny Brady of Conyers, Georgia, Miss Tanya Whitaker, Miss Crystal Whitaker, and Miss Tiffany Reed, all of Cordele, Georgia. Her beloved brother, Mr. Herbert Whitaker, and his wife, Mrs. Jennifer Whitaker of Cordele, Georgia. Her beloved aunts and uncles, a host of nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Mrs. Shamika LaShawn Reese Hardeman, age 45, of 306 West 17th Avenue, Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mrs. Shamika LaShawn Reese Hardeman, age 45, will be held today, Sunday, December 17th at 9 a.m. in the chapel of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home in Cordele, Georgia. Her beloved brother-in-law, the Reverend Reginald Hardeman, will officiate. The burial will follow at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. Beloved Pastor the Reverend Leonard Boston, age 76, of 951 Pleasant Valley Road, Vienna, Georgia, died Saturday, December 9th at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include his loving and devoted wife, Mrs. Lucille Towns Boston of Vienna, Georgia. 3 beloved children, Mr. Denos Bembry and his wife, Mrs. Heidi Bembry, Mrs. Shante Smith and her husband, Mr. Jonathan Smith, and Mr. Heisman Boston and his wife, Mrs. Teresa Boston. 1 godson, Mr. Zantonia M. Towns. 8 beloved grandchildren, 1 great-granddaughter, a beloved brother, Mr. Terry Boston and his wife, Mrs. Donna Boston, his beloved sisters, Minister Cynthia Bryant, Mrs. Dorothy Lamar, Mrs. Jacqueline Smith, Mrs. Judy F. Williams and her husband, Sir Clarence Williams, Mrs. Catherine Burden and her husband, the Reverend Louis Burden, Mrs. Regina Morgan, Mrs. May Frances West, Mrs. Rosa M. Pettis, his beloved in-law, Mr. Henry Towns and his wife, Mrs. Tracy Towns, Mr. William L. Towns, Pastor Vanessa Dobbins and her husband, Mr. Joseph Dobbin, Mrs. Faye Nance and her husband, Mr. Nathaniel Nance, Mrs. Evelyn Hewitt and her husband, Mr. Joseph Hewitt, and Mrs. Eva Cheney and her husband, Mr. Luther Cheney. A host of beloved nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Beloved Pastor, the Reverend Leonard Boston, age 76, of 951 Pleasant Valley Road, Vienna, Georgia. The funeral service for beloved Pastor, the Reverend Leonard Boston, age 76, will be held today, Sunday, December 17th, at 1 p.m. in the sanctuary of the Church of the Living God in Vienna, Georgia. Pastor Van Esther Dobbins, pastor, the Reverend Charles Cobb Sr., pastor of the Free Providence Baptist Church and the Spring Hill Baptist Church, will officiate. The burial will follow at the Vienna City Cemetery in Vienna, Georgia. Mrs. Barbara Ann Owens Peterson, age 75, of Rochester, New York, died Wednesday, November 29th in Rochester, New York. Survivors include her loving and devoted children, Miss Shante Dias of Rochester, New York, Mr. Lamar Peterson of Marietta, Georgia, and Ms. Miza Peterson of Rochester, New York. 6 beloved grandchildren, 1 great-grandchild, a beloved sister, Miss Ernestine Owens of Orlando, Florida. Her beloved brothers, Mr. Rufus Owens and Mr. Willie Owens, both of Orlando, Florida, and Pastor Marcus McQuiz of Daytona, Florida. A beloved daughter-in-law, Mrs. Ebony Peterson, a host of beloved nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Mrs. Barbara Ann Owens Peterson, age 75, of Rochester, New York. The funeral service for Mrs. Barbara Ann Owens Peterson, age 75, will be held Wednesday, December 20th at 11 a.m., graveside at the Crossroads Cemetery in Unadilla, Georgia. Her beloved brother, Pastor Mark McQuiz, will officiate. The public visitation will be Tuesday, December 19th from 1 until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. Mr. DeQuavius Tremaine Cleckley, age 20, of 1366 Dayspring Trace, Lawrenceville, Georgia, died Saturday, November 11, at Wellstar North Fulton Hospital in Lawrenceville, Georgia. Survivors include his loving and devoted mother, Miss Deonde Williams Cleckley of Lawrenceville, Georgia. His loving and caring father, Mr. Damian Cleckley of West Henrietta, New York. His loving sisters, Mrs. Denia T. Cleckley of Lawrenceville, Georgia. Miss Damian L. Cleckley of West Henrietta, New York. And Miss Dior T. Winslow of Goldsboro, North Carolina. His beloved brother, Mr. DeTravian Cleckley. His loving and devoted grandparents, Mrs. Annette Watts Williams of Leslie, Georgia, and Mr. O.C. Williams of DeSoto, Georgia, Miss Sherry Sapp Cleckley of Camilla, Georgia, and Mr. Maurice R. Cleckley of Americus, Georgia. His beloved uncles, Mr. Oscar Williams III of DeSoto, Georgia, and Mr. Derinsky T. Cleckley of Atlanta, Georgia. A host of beloved cousins, other relatives, and many sorrowing friends survive Mr. DeQuavius Tremaine Cleckley, age 20, of 1366 Dayspring Trace, Lawrenceville, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. DeQuavius Tremaine Cleckley, age 20, will be held Saturday, December 23rd at 11 a.m. in the sanctuary of the St. John Baptist Church in Leslie, Georgia. The Reverend Calvin James, pastor. The burial will follow at Sattler Cemetery in Lee County, Georgia. The public visitation will be Friday, December 22nd from 1 until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. Miss Evelyn Brown Beal, age 65, of Virginia Beach, Virginia, formerly of Dooley County, Georgia, died Thursday, December 14th at Centauria Lee Hospital in North Fork, Virginia. Survivors include her loving and devoted daughter, Miss Regina Hare, and her husband, Mr. Andre Hare, of Sparks, Nevada. Two beloved grandchildren, her loving and devoted sibling, Mrs. Betty B. Bryant, and her husband, Deacon Hentley Bryant of Vienna, Georgia, Mr. Bobby Brown and his wife, Mrs. Carolyn Brown of Hawkinsville, Georgia, Miss Tammy Brown of Atlanta, Georgia, Miss Rhonda Zellner and her husband, Mr. Tim Zellner, and Mr. Maurice Brown and his wife, Mrs. Tamala Brown, both of Warner Robins, Georgia. The funeral service for Miss Evelyn Brown Beal, age 65, will be announced at a later date pending the completion of the arrangements. Mr. Willie Charles Williams, age 75, of North Augusta, South Carolina, formerly of Cordele, Georgia, died Thursday, December 14th at Lexington Medical Center in West Columbia, South Carolina. Survivors include his loving and devoted son, Mr. Tron Williams, and his wife, Mrs. Jean Williams of North Augusta, South Carolina. His beloved grandchildren, A sister-in-law, Miss Wilhelmina Williams of Cordele, Georgia. A host of beloved nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive Mr. Willie Charles Williams, age 75, of North Augusta, South Carolina, formerly of Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Willie Charles Williams, age 75, will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. The J.W. Williams funeral directors serving Cordele and Vienna are in charge of each of these arrangements during this week. And now for an out-of-town funeral notice. Mrs. Annie Lou Mathis Brown, age 85, of Titusville, Florida, formerly of Cordele, Georgia, died Friday, December 8th in Titusville, Florida. The funeral and burial service was held Saturday, December 16th in Titusville, Florida. Locally, she survived by her beloved sister, Dr. Ruby Mathis Jackson, her beloved sister-in-law, Mother Lily Mathis, and a host of other relatives. The Louis Ray Mortuary of Titusville, Florida, was in charge of all arrangements. Friends, that conclude our funeral notices for this morning. And as always, we do remind you concerning our pre-funeral arrangements planning available at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home, with packages available with a single pay, a 3-year pay, a 5-year pay, and a 10-year pay. So please stop by and talk with us concerning your pre-funeral arrangements needs available at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. And also whole life insurance is available at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. And now for announcements. The new Poplar Spring Baptist Church of Byronville, Georgia, annual Christmas program will be held today, Sunday, December 17th at 8 a.m. Breakfast will be served. Everyone is invited. The Reverend Johnny Dean, pastor, New Poplar Springs Baptist Church, Byronville, Georgia. The Lincoln Douglas Memorial Association, America's in Sumter County Community 161st celebration of the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation will be Monday, January 1st, 2024 at 11 a.m. Whole Truth International Ministry, 502 Lee Street, Americus, Georgia, will be the host church. The Reverend Rob Hubbard, pastor of the Big Bethel Baptist Church of Americus, Georgia, will deliver the emancipation message. For more information, please contact Deacon James L. Bryant of the Reverend Lodinia Coleman Committee. The Reverend George F. Muntz, host pastor. The McAfee Grove Baptist Church, Highway 19 North, Leesburg, Georgia, invites everyone to worship with them. Family night, Tuesday at 7 p.m. Small class studies, Thursday at 7 p.m. Sunday morning worship at 9 a.m. You may join them by dialing 425-436-6341. 425-436-6341. The code is 708058. 708058. 558. Minister Trawanda Daniels, Church Secretary. Dr. Robert L. Morgan, Senior Pastor. The New Corinth Baptist Church, Hooks Mill Road, Leslie, Georgia, invites everyone to worship with them today, Sunday at 10 a.m. Deacon Johnny Griffin, Chairman of Deacons, and the Reverend Carl Smith is the pastor. The Gospel Travelers of Oakville, Georgia, 59th anniversary will be Sunday, December 17, today, at the Warwick Community Center, 111 Dogwood Street, Warwick, Georgia. On program will be the Georgia Boys of Meigs, Georgia, Precision and Brothers in Christ of Albany, Georgia, Truly Blessed of Albany, Georgia, the Gospel Stars of Lily, Georgia, the Gospel Kings of Warner Robins, Georgia, the Chosen Voices of Ideal, Georgia. Doors open at 4 p.m. The program begins at 5. The admission is free. Again, the Gospel Travelers of Oakville, Georgia, 59th anniversary will be observed today, Sunday, December 17, at the Warwick Community Center in Warwick, Georgia. On program, the Georgia Boys of Meigs, Georgia, Precision and Brothers in Christ of Albany, Georgia, Truly Blessed of Albany, Georgia, the Gospel Stars of Lily, Georgia, the Gospel Kings of Warner Robins, Georgia, Chosen Voices of Idea, Georgia. The doors open at 4 p.m. The program begins at 5 p.m. Admission is free. The Beulah Land Baptist Church Gospel Choir Christmas concert will be today, Sunday, December 17th at 2 p.m. Everyone is invited to come and worship. Deacon Willie Smith, Chairman of Deacons, Dr. Dwayne Daniels, Pastor. The Mount Moriah Baptist Church of Warwick, Georgia, invite you to service Sunday, December 24th at 8 a.m., Sunday school at 8 a.m., worship service at 9 a.m. Everyone is invited on Sunday, December 24th. Sunday school begins at 8 a.m. and worship service at 9 a.m. Mother Hazel Wright, Mother, Deacon Sammy McGill, Chairman of Deacons, and the Reverend Ivory Corbin, Pastor. The annual Emancipation Proclamation Service for Chris County will be observed Monday, January 1st, 2024 at 11 a.m. at the Emmanuel Missionary Baptist Church. Dr. T.C. Boone, Pastor Faith Perfection Life Center of Warner Robins, Georgia, will deliver the emancipation message. Everyone is invited. The Cordell Chris County branch of NAACP annual Freedom Fund banquet will be Saturday, January 13, 2024 at Blackshirt Place Event Center. Tickets on sale now. For more information, please contact Ms. Dorothy Bryant or any member of the local branch. Ms. Kathy McGill, branch secretary, the Reverend Isaac H. Owens, branch president. The Mount Zion First African Baptist Church conference call scheduled Sunday morning at 10 a.m., prayer Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 12 noon. Bible study each Wednesday at 5 p.m. The call-in number is 339-209-6419. The call-in number for the Mount Zion First African Baptist Church, 339-209-6419. Deacon Joe Wedges, Chairman of Deacons, Dr. Dan James III, Pastor. The Gethsemane Baptist Church invites everyone to worship with them each Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Mother Mary Butler, Church Mother, Deacon Johnny Wilson, Chairman of Deacons, and the Reverend Cecil Strouder, Pastor. The New Oak Grove Baptist Church invites everyone to worship with them each Sunday. Sunday school at 9:15 a.m., worship service at 10 a.m. Face covering is required. Sister Letha Askew, church clerk and trustee, Deacon Alonzo Jones, Chairman of Deacons, the Reverend W. Wilson, Pastor. The Beautiful Zion Baptist Church invites everyone to worship with them today at 11 a.m. Mother Grace Patrick Church Mother, the Reverend Lorinda Ray, is the pastor. The Greater Gum Creek Baptist Church invites everyone to worship with them today, Sunday, at 10:30 a.m. Mother Norma Solomon Church Mother, Deacon Lonnie Hoggebrook, Chairman of Deacons, and the Reverend Joseph Hoggebrook is the pastor. You're invited to worship with the Greater Morris Tabernacle Baptist Church today with Sunday school at 9 a.m. with the superintendent, Deacon John Stubbs, and Deacon Donald Talbot in charge. Morning worship at 9:30 a.m. The annual Christmas program will be observed at 6 p.m. today, and everyone is invited. Deacon Kenneth Smith, Program Chairman, Mother Mary Henderson, Church Mother, Deacon Tommy Ford, Chairman of Deacons, and Dr. K.M. Williams is the pastor. Friends, that conclude our announcements for this morning, and we do pray that you would govern yourselves accordingly. Now for dedication. Our first selection this morning is dedicated to the following. In loving memory of Mr. Johnny McGill, who would have celebrated his birthday December 12th, dedication requested by the McGill family. In loving memory of Mr. Albert Kendrick, dedication requested by the Kendrick family. In loving memory of Mr. Ernest Brown, dedication requested by the Brown family. In loving memory of Mr. Floyd Reeves Jr., who would have celebrated his birthday December 14th, dedication requested by his beloved sister, Mrs. Wanda Stevens, his beloved father, Mr. Floyd Reeves Sr., and the entire Edward Reeves, Kellogg, and Doster family. In loving memory of Mr. Jesse Pound, former member of the famous Golden Heirs, who would have celebrated his birthday December 15th, dedication requested by his beloved wife, Mrs. Mary Helen Ford Pounds, his children, grandchildren, and the entire family. In loving memory of Mrs. Emma May Lester, who would have celebrated her birthday December 15th, dedication requested by her beloved children and grandchildren. In loving memory of Mr. Tony McGill, who departed this life December 15, 2018, dedication requested by the McGill family. In loving memory of Mrs. Carrie Lee Levant, who would have celebrated her birthday December 17, dedication requested by the Levant family. In loving memory of Mrs. Donetta Butts, who would have celebrated her birthday December 17, dedication requested by the Butts family. In loving memory of Mr. Waldale Jackson, who departed this life December 18, 2013, dedication requested by the Jackson family. In loving memory of Mrs. Ethel McGill, who would have celebrated her birthday December 19, dedication requested by the McGill family. Our program this morning is dedicated to the following. Happy birthday to Deacon Sonny and Deaconess Martha Harris, who celebrated their anniversary Saturday, December 16, dedication requested by the Lester and Harris family. Our first selection this morning is dedicated to the following. Happy birthday to Miss Jennifer Turner, who celebrated her birthday Monday, December 11, dedication requested by her beloved family. Happy birthday to Miss Rolee Epps, who celebrated her birthday Thursday, December 14, dedication requested by her beloved children, grandchildren, the Lawton and Epps family. Happy birthday to our own Mrs. Shanita Collier Grace, who is celebrating her birthday today. Today, Sunday, December 17, dedication requested by her husband, Deacon Kenneth Grace, her children, grandchildren, the management and staff of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. Happy birthday to Minister Ulysses McGee, who is celebrating her birthday Today, December 17th, dedication requested by her beloved family. Happy birthday to Ms. LaShawn Pate Hickley, who is celebrating her birthday today, December 17th. Dedication requested by the family. Happy birthday to Mr. Henry Lee Fox Sr., who will be celebrating his birthday Tuesday, December 18th. Happy birthday to Mr. Oscar McGill, who will celebrate his birthday Tuesday, December 19th. Dedication requested by the McGill family. Happy birthday to Mr. Jimmy Sanders, who will celebrate his birthday Thursday, December 21st. Dedication requested by his beloved wife, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and the entire family. And my friends, due to the large number of announcements, I do know that you understand why we would not be able to get around to our number of dedications this morning. But do remember that each and every Sunday, our program is dedicated to those listening in and enjoy our program on each Sunday morning. It is certainly with the deepest regret that we make the following announcement. Mrs. Shamika LaShawn Reese Hardiman, age 45, of 306 West 17th Avenue, Cordele, Georgia, died Sunday, December 3rd at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mrs. Shamika LaShawn Reese Hardiman, age 45, will be held today, Sunday, December 17th at 9 a.m. in the chapel of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home in Cordele, Georgia. Her beloved brother-in-law, the Reverend Reginald Hardiman, will officiate. The burial will follow at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. Beloved pastor, the Reverend Leonard Boston, age 76, of 951 Pleasant Valley Road, Vienna, Georgia, died Saturday, December 9th at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for beloved pastor, the Reverend Leonard Boston, age 76, will be held today, Sunday, December 17th at 1 p.m. in the sanctuary of the Church of the Living God in Vienna, Georgia. Pastor Van Esther Dobbins, pastor. The Reverend Charles Cobb Sr., pastor of the Free Providence Baptist Church and the Spring Hill Baptist Church, will officiate. The burial will follow at the Vienna City Cemetery in Vienna, Georgia. Mrs. Barbara Ann Owens Peterson, age 75, of Rochester, New York, died Wednesday, November 29th in Rochester, New York. The funeral service for Mrs. Barbara Ann Owens Peterson, age 75, will be held Wednesday, December 20th at 11 a.m. graveside at the Crossroads Cemetery in Unadilla, Georgia. Her beloved brother, Pastor Mark McQuez, will officiate. The public visitation will be Tuesday, December 19th from 1 until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. Mr. DeQuavius Tremaine Cleckley, age 20, of 1366 Dayspring Trace, Lawrenceville, Georgia, died Saturday, November 11th at Wellstar North Fulton Hospital in Lawrenceville, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. DeQuavius Tremaine Cleckley, age 20, will be held Saturday, December 23rd at 11 a.m. in the sanctuary of the St. John Baptist Church in Leslie, Georgia. The Reverend Calvin James, pastor. The burial will follow at Sattler Cemetery in Lee County, Georgia. The public visitation will be Friday, December 22nd from 1 until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. Miss Evelyn Brown Beal, age 65, of Virginia Beach, Virginia, formerly of Dooley County, Georgia, died Thursday, December 14th at the Centaurea Lee Hospital in Fort North, Virginia. The funeral service for Miss Evelyn Brown Beal, age 65, will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. Mr. Willie Charles Williams, age 75, of North Augusta, South Carolina, formerly of Cordele, Georgia, died Thursday, December 14th at the Lexington Medical Center in West Columbia, South Carolina. The funeral service for Mr. Willie Charles Williams, age 75, will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. The J.W. Williams Funeral Directors serving Cordele and Vienna are in charge of each of these arrangements during this week. Our final selection for this morning is dedicated to the bereaved families whose loved ones were laid to rest during the past week. The family of Mr. Xavier Alexander Sims of Americus, Georgia. The family of Mother Alberta Brown Troutman of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mrs. Bernadine Green King of Lithonia, Georgia, formerly of Americus, Georgia. The family of Miss Gwendolyn Reed Sellers of Abbeville, Georgia. The family of Miss Carlita Elaine Lewis of Cordele, Georgia. This selection is dedicated to the bereaved families whose loved ones will be laid to rest during this week. The family of Miss Shamika LaShawn Reese Hardeman of Cordele, Georgia. The family of beloved pastor, the Reverend Leonard Boston of Vienna, Georgia. The family of Mrs. Barbara Ann Owens Peterson of Rochester, New York. The family of Mr. DeQuavius Tremaine Cleckley of Lawrenceville, Georgia. The family of Miss Evelyn Brown Beal of Virginia Beach, Virginia, formerly of Dooley County, Georgia. The family of Mr. Willie Charles Williams of North Augusta, South Carolina, formerly of Cordele, Georgia. Our program this morning is dedicated to all of the sick and shut-in, to all patients in the local and surrounding hospitals, nursing homes, and rehabilitation centers, to our beloved ministers and their devoted family members, to all retired educators, to the men and women serving in our armed forces, both stateside and abroad, to all veterans, and to everyone who listens to our program on each Sunday morning. It's a pleasure for us to bring it to you. Our program goes out in memory of our past president, Dr. Napoleon Williams, to my wife, Mrs. Calandra Wilkerson Parker, to my son, John Wilkerson Parker. This selection goes out to my mother-in-law, Mrs. Billy Ann Hall, and family, to my brother, retired Chief Master Sergeant Norman F. Dexter, and his wife, Dr. Gwendolyn Knightseen Dexter, my grandson Noble. This selection goes out to my sister, Mrs. Patsy Johnson, and Mr. Jim Johnson of Cordele, Georgia. To my nephew, Deacon Kenneth Smith, program chairman of the Greater Morris Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church, to our pastor, Dr. K.M. Williams, again inviting you to worship service today at Sunday school at 9 a.m. with Superintendent Deacon John Stubbs and Deacon Donald Talbot in charge. Morning worship at 9 a.m. and the annual Christmas program will be observed today at 6 p.m. This program goes out to my niece, Mrs. Vera Mathis, and Mrs. Florine Manning, and the entire Manning and Montfred family. A dear friend, Deacon Jimmy Charles Montfred, and Sister Carol Montfred, the Reverend Johnny Dean, and the members of the New Poplar Spring Baptist Church of Byronville, Georgia. This selection goes out to our beloved Miss Easter Ray Sanders, to Mr. Cleveland R. Lemon, Old staff member of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home and steward of the Bethel CME Church here in the city of Cordele, Georgia. Again, our program goes out to each and everyone who listens to our program on each Sunday morning. God bless you this third Sunday in December 2023. God bless you.
Thank you for joining us this morning. We hope you've enjoyed our program. Tune in again on next Sunday morning. In your time of need, contact the competent, capable, and dependable staff at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home.